I built my boss's business for 4 years, he took the credit, the money, and then threw me under the bus. Worked for my boss, let's call him Brian, for 4 years. For long, soul-crushing years where I gave everything I had to a company that was barely more than a dream when I joined. Now I'm jobless, reputation damaged, and still picking up the pieces. Here's how it all happened. The beginning. In 2020, I was looking for work after a rough layoff. I met Brian through a mutual contact. He was trying to launch a small logistics tech company. It sounded exciting, risky, yes, but he offered me a leadership role, even if the pay was low at first, and a promise, help me build this, and you'll have a share in the company. I was naive. Hungry. Grateful. So I joined. There were only 3 of us in the beginning, Brian, me, and a junior dev. But I did everything. Built the website. Handled all the back-end architecture. Found our first clients. Hired and trained interns. Worked late nights and weekends. Brian? He shook hands and pitched. But he was never there when servers went down at 3 a.m., or when a furious client threatened to walk unless we fixed a feature that Brian promised but never told me about. I made it work anyway. Every time. Success, for him. By 2022, we were making real money. Over $1.2 million in contracts. Investors started showing interest. Brian started dressing like a CEO. Slick suits. Tesla. Business lunches. Me. Still grinding. Still in a hoodie, still troubleshooting bugs at 11 p.m. And still being told, don't worry, once funding closes, you'll get your cut. I started asking for things in writing. He brushed it off, come on, we're brothers. Don't you trust me? I should have known then. The betrayal. Last year, a major investor signed on. $3 million in funding. Brian threw a launch party in a rooftop bar downtown. I wasn't even invited. When I asked him why, he said, you know how investors are. They want clean org charts. You're more of a technical contractor, not really on the executive team. I nearly lost it. But I held on. I needed time to figure out my next move. Then came the real kicker. This past March, I was called into a meeting, not with Brian, but with our lawyers. Apparently, Brian had filed a performance complaint against me, claiming I failed to deliver key features, caused client losses, and misused company resources. All lies. He used it to justify terminating my contract, avoiding paying me a dime from the funding, and keeping everything I built. The fallout. I tried fighting back legally. Turns out I had signed a work-for-hire agreement buried in one of the early documents, no equity, no rights to the code. Everything was in his name. My reputation took a hit. He told people I went rogue, that I couldn't handle the pressure, and that I tried to blackmail him. I had recruiters ghosting me. Former colleagues hesitant to even return my messages. All while he posted on LinkedIn about leading innovation and bootstrapping from the ground up. I was the ground. Now. I'm slowly rebuilding. Freelancing. Working with people who actually appreciate my skills. It's not easy, but it's honest. Brian? I heard he's facing an audit. Apparently he made promises to multiple people about shares, and someone else filed a lawsuit. Karma? Maybe. All I know is, if you're ever offered a bro deal, get it in writing. Because in the end, I didn't just lose my job. I lost 4 years of my life building someone else's dream, and watching them bury me under it. He took everything, so I took my reputation back. After Brian fired me and smeared my name across the industry, I hit rock bottom. My inbox was a graveyard. Recruiters stopped replying. One company ghosted me right after the final interview, turns out Brian personally called the hiring manager and told them I was unstable. The man I gave 4 years of my life to, the one whose startup I practically built brick by brick, wasn't content with stealing my work, he wanted to erase me. But I wasn't going to let that happen. If he wanted war, I'd bring it. And unlike Brian, I don't bluff. 1. Documentation is power. I may have been naive when I joined Brian's startup, but I wasn't stupid. Even back in the early days, I saved everything. Old Git commits. Slack conversations. Emails where he approved my architecture decisions. Screenshots of our Trello boards with my initials all over every completed project. Even the pitch deck I designed that he presented to investors as his own work. For years, I was the one organizing our digital systems. So I had a quiet advantage: access. After I got fired, I spent a month building a dossier, timelines, files, proof of authorship, even internal metrics I had recorded showing our growth under my leadership. He wanted to play games. I had receipts. 2. The anonymous tip. I knew that Brian had been lying to investors, not just about me, but about the company's origin, code ownership, and internal processes. So I crafted a professional, anonymous letter. Sent it to 3 of his biggest investors, 2 of his clients, and a tech watchdog blog. Inside. Proof of inflated user metrics. Evidence he repackaged open source code as proprietary. Email chains showing that I had designed the core infrastructure. My termination notice, complete with fake performance claims. One of the clients pulled out within 2 days. The blog published a piece a week later. Startup star Brian M., accused of fraud by former co-founder, evidence leaked. The comments section exploded. 3. The lawsuit, round 2. When I was first fired, I tried going after him legally, but I was told that the contract I signed gave him full ownership. But after the story went public, I found a new attorney. A shark. She saw something the first one missed. The IP agreement was signed before the company was incorporated. In other words, I didn't sign away my rights to that company. I signed them to him, personally, and he transferred everything to the business after the fact without renegotiating. That gave us a foothold. She filed a lawsuit demanding back pay, damages, and intellectual property compensation. We requested discovery. That's when we found something even juicier. 4. The hidden account. During discovery, we found a separate Stripe account Brian had set up under a different LLC. Turns out, he had funneled over $400,000 from clients into that account off books, paying himself and avoiding taxes, while telling investors the company was barely breaking even. We subpoenaed the records and handed them off to the IRS. That was the beginning of the end for Brian. 5. The fall. In less than 3 months, 2 major clients terminated their contracts. A federal investigation opened against him. His lead investor filed suit to recover funds. And the blog that broke the story? They did a follow-up, now calling the startup a house of cards. I watched Brian's LinkedIn go from smug self-congratulatory posts to total silence. I didn't gloat. Not publicly. But when I heard he had to sell his car to pay his legal bills, I won't lie, I slept better that night. 6. The comeback. I finally landed a new job, not from recruiters, but through someone who had read the article and reached out. A CTO at a mid-sized tech firm had been burned by a co-founder years earlier. He read my story, saw the evidence I had posted, and said, "You sound like someone who's been through hell. That means you probably know how to build something that lasts." He hired me as lead engineer. Gave me a team. Listened to me. Trusted me. It felt unreal. But I didn't just go back to coding. I started speaking, at meetups, at startup bootcamps, at panels. Sharing my story. Warning others. Don't give your life to someone who sees you as disposable. 7. one last email. Last week, I got an email from Brian. I hadn't heard from him in nearly a year. The subject line just said, "I made a mistake." He rambled about the pressure, the investors, how he felt like he had to act big to keep the company afloat. He said he never meant to hurt me. That he wanted to apologize. That maybe we could grab coffee sometime and catch up. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. He's lost everything, and I've rebuilt from scratch. Not because I stooped to his level, but because I outlasted him. Lessons I'll never forget. 1. Trust is earned, not given. Don't buy into the "we're family" speech. Get it in writing. 2. Save everything. If someone screws you, evidence is the only thing that matters. 3. Your work has value. If someone else is getting rich off your sweat, and you're not, it's time to walk. 4. Never let them write your story. Reclaim it, even if it takes time. 1 year later, he tried to steal my life again. I thought I was done with Brian. I had rebuilt my career. I was in a stable, well-paying job with leadership responsibilities. I had colleagues who respected me, clients who listened, and a CTO who valued my ideas. The lawsuit had settled in my favor, the investigation was ongoing, and I had found peace. Or so I thought. But when someone like Brian loses everything, they don't learn. They plot. And exactly 1 year after I exposed him, he tried again, this time, not just to steal my work, but to become me. 1. The conference. It started with a tech conference in Austin. My company invited me to speak on a panel about startup resilience. It was a huge event, hundreds of founders, engineers, investors. I had prepared my story, polished and clear, about how I survived betrayal and rebuilt. As I walked backstage, I heard someone say, "Isn't that the guy who stole IP from Cloud Nest?" I froze. Cloud Nest. That was the fake name Brian used in his new startup. I looked up and saw the speaker badge of the man who said it, VP of Product, Cloud Nest AI. I immediately pulled out my phone. Their website was live. Their pitch. Hyperscalable infrastructure designed for rapid deployment, built from real experience in logistics tech. Their founder. Brian. 2. Copy-paste startup. I spent the next 48 hours digging into Cloud Nest. And my jaw dropped. It was a clone. The logo was different, the branding slicker, but the tech stack, the pitch decks, the demo app, all of it was repackaged versions of the architecture I designed 4 years ago. He even quoted lines from my original documentation in a public GitHub README. And here's the worst part. His LinkedIn now listed him as the lead engineer and visionary of the original framework powering Streamroute systems. My startup. The one he pushed me out of. The one I built. Now he wasn't just pretending I didn't exist. He was rewriting history. 3. The confrontation. I found him at the conference the next morning. He was talking to a group of young founders, wearing that same smug smile he always had. I walked right up and said, "Funny. I didn't realize my old code got reincarnated." He turned to me like he didn't recognize me. "Sorry, do we know each other?" "Oh, that smug bastard." "Yeah," I said. "From the court deposition. And the blog post. And 4 years of code you couldn't write if your life depended on it." He laughed nervously. Some of the people around us started whispering. He pulled me aside. And then he snapped. "What do you want from me? You already ruined everything once. You want me to starve?" "No," I said. "I want you to stop living off my work." His voice dropped to a whisper. "They don't care who wrote it. They care who sells it." And that's still me. That's when I knew. He would never stop. Not until someone stopped him. 4. The public unraveling. This time, I didn't go anonymous. I wrote a long LinkedIn post. Laid out the whole timeline. Attached screenshots, commit logs, emails, side-by-side comparisons of code from StreamRoute and Cloud Nest. I told the story clearly. Factually. Publicly. And I ended it with: reputation is earned. You can steal code, presentations, and even funding, but you can't steal character. If you're building on lies, you're building on quicksand. It went viral within 48 hours. Developers started commenting with their own stories about Brian, how he tried to recruit them using sketchy contracts. One person even claimed he lifted their UI design for a client demo. That's when I got a call. 5. The media storm. A journalist from TechRadar Weekly reached out. They had covered my previous case and wanted a follow-up. They asked for interviews, screenshots, even old Slack logs. 2 weeks later, the article dropped. The Grifter founder, how one man burned his bridges, then tried to sell the ashes. It exploded. Cloud Nest's investors pulled out. One even commented publicly on the article, saying they were misled about the tech's origins. GitHub repositories were pulled. Domain hosting vanished. And Brian? He deleted his LinkedIn. Again. 6. The message that broke me. Just when I thought it was over, I got an anonymous email. No subject line. Inside was just a short message. He's applying for a job at your company under a different name. Check the intern applications. Look for Daniel P. I forwarded it to HR. They called me 2 hours later, stunned. He had applied as a 27-year-old full-stack dev named Daniel Pierce, with a fake resume, stock photo, and a made-up GitHub. He even listed me as a reference. HR was horrified. They pulled the application and flagged his identity. I laughed so hard I cried. But beneath the humor was something darker. He didn't just want my career. He wanted to become me. 7. Closure and release. 2 months ago, the IRS concluded their investigation into his financial misconduct. He was charged with wire fraud and tax evasion. He pled down to avoid jail, but he lost everything. He now works part-time doing freelance SEO for a landscaping company, if his Upwork profile is to be believed. As for me, I got promoted. My team grew. I mentor young developers now, teaching them not just code, but how to protect themselves. And I'm writing a book. Not out of spite, but because stories like mine happen too often, and no one talks about them until it's too late. 8. Last word. Brian taught me something, unintentionally. If someone needs to lie to build their legacy, it's not a legacy worth keeping. He built his life on fraud, and it collapsed again and again. I built mine on truth, resilience, and the people who believed in me. And when someone finally Googles his name, they'll find my story. Not his. I saw him again after 3 years, he was just a man now. It's been 3 years since I exposed Brian for the second time. 3 years since he tried to rebrand himself with a stolen identity, copy my code again, and sneak into the tech world through the back door, my back door. He lost his investors, was blacklisted by recruiters, and pled down in a fraud case. I moved on. I built a team, launched new tools, mentored people, gave talks. But there was still one part of me that hadn't let go. Maybe I needed to see him fall. Really fall. Or maybe I just needed to see him. Not the ghost I'd been fighting. Not the villain in my story. Just the man. 1. The bookstore. 2 weeks ago, I walked into a small independent bookstore in Seattle while visiting friends. It was raining. I needed somewhere dry to pass time before a dinner reservation. And that's when I saw him. Brian. Standing behind the counter. He was thinner. Gray at the edges. He wore a second-hand flannel shirt, slightly faded, and a bookstore name tag. "Hi, I'm Brian, ask me about sci-fi." He didn't see me at first. He was helping a young couple find a gift. Smiling. Moving slowly. Almost like he'd aged 10 years in 3. When they left, I walked up to the register. He turned to greet me, and froze. His face drained of color. "You." I nodded. "Hey, Brian." We stood in silence for several seconds. He looked down at the counter, cleared his throat, then quietly asked. "You here to ruin something else?" I shook my head. "No. Just here for coffee and a book." He smirked, bitter. "You win, then. Is that what you wanted?" 2. The conversation I never expected. I didn't expect what came next. We talked. In that empty bookstore, him on one side of the counter, me on the other, we had a conversation that was 3 years overdue. I didn't yell. He didn't beg. He told me he'd lost everything. Not just the businesses, but friends, family, relationships. No one trusted him. Every job application got flagged. His name was poison. He said, I became what I pretended to be. Then I lost even the pretend. I asked him why he did it. Why he kept coming after me, even after losing everything once. He didn't have a dramatic answer. Just. I thought if I could become you, I'd be worth something again. That hit harder than I expected. Because I realized, Brian was never strong. Never original. He just fed off people like me. And now, with no one left to leech off. He was empty. 3. Forgiveness isn't a favor. I told him I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't pity him either. He nodded slowly. You should hate me. I would. I shrugged. That's your punishment, not mine. He asked if I'd ever consider working together again. I laughed. Not cruelly, just out of disbelief. No. That chapter's over. He looked relieved, oddly. Like he expected worse. I bought a book. A sci-fi novel he recommended. Paid in cash. Wished him well. As I left, he said. You were always better than me. I stopped at the door. I was never trying to be. 4. Closure. I walked out into the rain with the book under my arm. Something shifted in me. Not triumph. Not victory. Just peace. Brian was no longer the boss who destroyed my career, the fraud who stole my work, or the man who tried to become me. He was just a man. Standing behind a register in a dusty shop. Trying to stay afloat. And I was free.